Hi, welcome to Online Drawing 2, Session 6. This lesson is going to include pastels on a gray paper. I've chosen the light gray paper. You can use either the light or the dark. I'm using pastel pencils and a set of pastels to fill in. But I'm going to start with pencil because I've chosen a more complicated assignment this time, which includes 4 objects of various shapes that get larger in the foreground and get smaller as they move back. So I've had to do some perspective and proportion lines, and so I'm going to show you how I did that. Because I'm using a number 2 pencil and a pink eraser, I can play around with the angles of my dustpan. So here would be the angles of my dustpan. There's also the angle of the dustpan's handle, which is foreshortened because it's moving away from me and slightly, higher. So I look at the angle of the piece coming to the side and how it gets wider as it comes toward me. So that's a shape that I want to clearly mark. And because this line can't be parallel with this line, it has to actually eventually meet it on the horizon. If it continued in this direction and this continued in this direction, they would eventually meet out there somewhere. And the somewhere is on the edge of the earth. This is what our eye level is all about. The curve here comes down, and also these 2 lines, this one here and this one here, would also eventually meet on the horizon. So it has to get wider as it comes closer to me and narrower as it goes back. It has a triangular lift to the corner, and I see just a little bit of that lift over here. It's a cross section, which is parallel. So what happens at the very beginning is you do your marking to show where your lines are going to be. I'm going to do that also with my large jug in the back. And I'm going to do it with my Citrusolve container, both of which are parallel to the sides of the paper because they're vertical. So I'll show you what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to look at the negative space around the objects to make sure that I place them correctly. This angle, I have to double check before I add anything else. It is not an exact right angle. It is more like a acute angle. And I fit my last bottle into that angle, looking at the spaces here and here. Now, 2 of my objects have labels on them, so I'm not going to include the words. I'm only going to include the value change. There's a value change because this is yellow and this is blue and this is white and this is yellow. So that's how I will show it rather than including the words and the pictures on the surface. These lines will also cross on the horizon line. I make sure that I show both the front of my platform and the back of my platform. So I may end up changing the value from here to here. All right, well, this is enough to get started. I now have a line drawing and my objects fit into the space. And so I'm going to start by picking up my colors. There will, of course, be blues and yellows and whites and browns and a little bit of black. But I notate where I'm going to put my highlights at the beginning. I'm also going to notate where I put my shadows. And I'm not going to make them black, but a dark, cool blue. Let's see. This one. And it's just a notation. I'm not actually finishing these shadows yet. I use blue because it's cooler. If I used black, it would erase color temperature, so I use the blue just to remind myself that it's good when it mixes with other colors, it will remain cool. All right, so I'm now in a place where I can start using my pastel chunks. And I use those especially for the areas that are intensely colorful. I'm adding the complement, which is purple. I have a lighter lavender, which I'm going to use on the outside edges. Now I'm going to start working on my brown object. The good thing about the brown object is it pushes the foreground object forward. You can use a couple of different browns and a couple of different brown pencils and some black. As I mentioned earlier, I'm just going to use white as my label here. So I'm taking a large piece of white pastel and pressing down. I also have the option to do a darker background, which I think in this case I will do because it'll push my objects forward. And I can wait to do the last object until I'm sure what the values are going to be in the back and in the foreground. I'll be using a darker blue closer to the white tablecloth and a lighter blue as I move up. So notice that when you fill the background, suddenly the big jug becomes a positive. It's not just a line drawing, it feels like it's coming forward. You'll have to work with your eraser a bit if you came over the edges like I did. And so you push the edges back so that they're straight. But mostly, we just wanted it to be possible to see where the lights were and leave the grays as is, because this is a white object that when the shadow happens is gray, and when the highlight happens is white. So now the last bit of squinting, or you squint at your objects and you squint at your subject matter to make sure you have the darks where the darks are supposed to be and the lights where the lights are supposed to be. I'm also going to add the black. The only part of my still life that is black is the top of this bottle. And if you need to add some blacks around the bottoms of things, maybe mixed with a little bit of cool blue, that's what you would do next. All right, so this is my finished drawing. Yours will be your objects, but hopefully you found some colorful ones so you can use as many of the colors in your box as you want to, and have fun.